Life has a way of surprising us, slipping moments into our lives that quietly steer us in directions we never expected. My name is Ethan. I'm 26, an architect who recently traded the familiar calm of home for the nonstop energy of New York City. After landing my dream job at a top design firm, found myself juggling unpacking boxes, navigating the subway, and adjusting to Manhattan's relentless pace. Amid all that, I faced what seemed like a simple task: choosing a new primary care doctor. I didn't realize that this ordinary decision would set off an experience that changed how I saw myself and the world around me. I've never been someone who enjoys doctor visits unless absolutely necessary. I'd usually rely on over-the-counter remedies or a quick urgent care stop. But my new insurance required a full physical within 4 months. After weeks of putting it off, one crisp October evening, I finally opened the online provider directory. That's when I found Dr. Lucas Hayes. His credentials were impressive: Harvard Medical School graduate, published researcher, and glowing reviews from patients everywhere. But one detail stood out: his focus on LGBTQ plus healthcare. As a gay man who'd faced a few awkward or dismissive doctor visits, that small note felt like a quiet reassurance, a green flag I couldn't ignore. The following week, I arrived at his clinic. A sleek modern building tucked downtown, its glass walls catching the morning light. Inside, it felt less like a medical office and more like a serene wellness space. Soft instrumental music drifted through the air, mingling with a faint scent of lavender. Calm, not clinical. "Mr. Anderson, Dr. Lucas Hayes will see you now," the receptionist called. I followed her down a hallway lined with abstract art until she opened a door to a sunlit corner office, and that's when I first saw him. Dr. Lucas Hayes stood by his desk, reviewing what I assumed were my forms. He was tall, around 63, with broad shoulders that filled the white coat he wore. Dark hair brushed with silver framed a face that seemed both strong and approachable. When he looked up, his clear blue eyes met mine. And for a moment, the world outside that room fell away. "Ethan," he said, extending a hand, a steady, welcoming smile on his face. "Welcome." His handshake was firm, professional, yet somehow reassuring. "I see you've just relocated to New York," he said, his deep voice carrying a faint Boston accent that somehow felt warm. "Yes," I replied, keeping my tone steady. "It's been about 2 months. I moved here for work. Architecture, right?" he asked, glancing at my file. "That explains the detailed medical history. Most people aren't this thorough." I smiled despite myself. "Occupational hazard," I said lightly. "We architects tend to obsess over details." His grin was easy, genuine. "That makes my job easier. Let's get started, shall we?" As the appointment began, I noticed more than the routine checks. There was something calm and grounded about him, an assurance that made the whole experience feel unexpectedly safe. When he checked my blood pressure, he glanced at the monitor and said gently, slightly elevated. "Am I nervous?" I asked. "Probably just the visit," I admitted with a smile. "That's more common than you'd think," he said warmly. "Why don't we just talk for a bit first?" And so we did. What began as a medical checkup turned into a conversation that lasted 15 minutes. We talked about my career, the move, and how overwhelming yet exciting New York could be. He listened with genuine attention, never rushing. When he spoke, his words carried an ease that invited trust. He shared his own story moving to Chicago years ago and navigating his own adjustments. For a moment, the exam room didn't feel like a clinic at all. It felt like two people finding common ground in a city that often seemed too big to hold still. Finally, the quiet professionalism, he stood. "Well, Ethan, shall we continue with the physical exam?" He handed me a folded gown and nodded toward the side room with a reassuring smile. What began as a routine checkup had already become something more small. Meaningful reminder that sometimes the people we meet in passing can shift our perspective in unexpected ways. "Just remove your clothes. But keep your undergarments on," Dr. Hayes said kindly. Inside the small bathroom, I paused before the mirror. Years of swimming and workouts had kept me in shape, yet under the bright light, a sudden wave of self-consciousness surfaced. Every tiny imperfection felt exaggerated in the thin gown. I felt vulnerable, not from modesty, but because I wasn't in control here. When I stepped out, Dr. Hayes remained composed and professional. "Please have a seat on the exam table," he said, tapping the paper-covered surface. I climbed up carefully, adjusting the gown that felt lighter than air. The exam began in familiar rhythms, throat breathing. There was an unspoken tension in the quiet moments between instructions. When the cold stethoscope touched my chest, I flinched slightly. He gave a small, reassuring nod. "Take a deep breath," he said, calm and steady. I inhaled slowly, the sound of my heartbeat loud in my ears. "Your heart rate's a little fast. Are you nervous?" "A little," I admitted with a shaky laugh. "This always does that to me." He smiled faintly, easing the tension in the room. "Understandable." As he continued, the atmosphere softened. Every movement felt deliberate, precise, yet thoughtful. "Lie back, please," he said, preparing to check my abdomen. The paper beneath me rustled as I reclined, his hands pressing gently. Firm enough to be thorough, yet careful enough to never cross a line. "You've got some tension here," he said after a moment. "Do you sit at a desk most of the day?" "Pretty much," I admitted. "Work keeps you glued to a chair." He nodded knowingly. "You're not alone in that." Removing his gloves, he added, "Let's check your back muscles." As I sat up, he placed his hands on my shoulders, finding knots of tension I didn't even know were there. "A lot of stress," he said softly, his voice steady and kind. "You should stretch more often. Your body's asking for it." There was no pretense in his tone, only genuine concern. It was the kind of calm attention that made me feel seen. Without judgment, when the exam ended, he stepped back, regaining full professional composure. "Everything looks good medically," he said, scribbling notes. "But I recommend finding another primary care provider going forward, just to keep things consistent." "I can refer you to a few good ones," I nodded, a mix of relief and something else I couldn't quite name settling in my chest. "Thank you, Dr. Hayes," I said. He smiled gently. "You're welcome. Take care of yourself, Ethan." That evening, I couldn't stop thinking about our conversation, not because of the tension, but because of the rare honesty that lingered, a reminder that even ordinary moments can carry a deeply human connection. "I want to create a space where people feel safe," Lucas Hayes had said quietly. "Somewhere they know they'll never be judged for who they are." By the time the cafe lights dimmed, neither of us seemed ready for the night to end. The crisp autumn air brushed our faces as we walked through quiet streets, our shoulders occasionally brushing. "My place isn't far," he said after a pause, his tone hesitant but kind. "If you'd like to come up for a drink, just to talk." His apartment sat high above the city, the skyline stretching endlessly beyond the windows. Inside, it felt both modern and lived in medical journals, sharing space with art books and photographs from his travels. "Wine?" he offered, already reaching for a bottle. I nodded, watching him move with a relaxed ease I hadn't seen earlier at the clinic. He seemed lighter, more himself. We settled on the sofa, the city lights shimmering behind us. Conversation flowed as architecture, favorite authors, the strangeness of big city life. The evening unfolded in a rhythm that felt both new and familiar. The distance between us slowly disappeared, replaced by an easy understanding that needed no words. "I can't stop thinking about earlier," Lucas Hayes admitted, his voice softer now. "What happened in the exam room? It made me realize how hard it is to separate who we are from what we do." "You didn't lose control," I said gently. "You showed compassion." He gave a quiet, self-conscious laugh. "That's not always easy." Silence followed, calm but full of meaning. His hand brushed mine light, unintentional, yet carrying something unspoken. The air between us shifted, heavy with everything we weren't saying. "There's no going back to being just doctor and patient after tonight," he murmured. "Maybe that's okay," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. The moment stretched, delicate but certain. There was no rush, no need for anything more than the quiet truth sitting between us. City lights reflected softly across his face, and for a heartbeat, The world felt still. Hours slipped by unnoticed as we spoke about choices, purpose, and the strange ways people cross paths just when they need to. Lucas Hayes shared his dream of opening a community clinic, a place where people could truly feel seen and safe. There was a sincerity in his voice that reached past the surface. Eventually, we found ourselves standing near the wide window, the city glowing below. The connection between us was quiet. Undeniable, a meeting of two people who had finally let their walls down. "I should probably transfer your care to another doctor," Lucas Hayes said softly. "It's the right thing to do." "Always the professional," I teased gently, though my smile carried warmth. He returned the smile, thoughtful, grounded. "Some lines matter," he said, "but that doesn't mean this moment wasn't real." Outside, the city hummed with life, and for a while, neither of us spoke. The night wasn't about breaking rules or crossing lines. It was about honesty, connection, and the rare comfort of being truly understood. "Have you thought about what comes next?" he asked, propping himself on one elbow to meet my gaze. His eyes sharp, steady, possibly blue held mine, as if waiting for an answer that really mattered. "Honestly," I said quietly, "it's been all I've thought about since the moment I stepped into your office this morning. This isn't just attraction for me, Lucas Hayes." His voice softened, his guard slipping for the first time. "There's something here I can't ignore. It feels different." I knew exactly what he meant. Despite how unexpectedly we met, what we shared had already grown into something deeper, something neither of us had planned for. "I want to do this right," he continued. "Real dates. Real time together. Outside of medical charts and offices. I want to know you." "I'd like that," I said, smiling as he leaned closer. That night stretched into hours of conversation and quiet laughter. Lucas Hayes shared stories of his childhood and how watching his grandmother battle illness had inspired him to become a doctor. I told him about my passion for sustainable architecture and my dream of designing spaces that could heal and inspire. By dawn, the city outside his window glowed with streaks of pink and gold. Lucas Hayes made coffee, and we stood together, watching the skyline wake. His arms wrapped gently around me as he whispered, "Stay for breakfast." "I make a mean eggs Benedict," I teased. "Only if you promise not to burn down the kitchen." His warm laugh filled the space. The weeks that followed blurred into something steady and real. Lucas Hayes' schedule as a physician was relentless, but he always made time for us. My clothes quietly began living at his place. My toothbrush appeared beside his. One evening, after a long day at the firm, a delivery arrived of my favorite Thai food. Inside the bag was a note. "Eat something healthy. Doctor's orders. See you tonight." Jet became our things, small gestures woven into ordinary days. He'd leave journals open to medical articles he thought I'd enjoy, and I'd leave quick sketches of buildings in the margins of his morning paper. Piece by piece, we were building something lasting. Of course, challenges came. The medical community was small, and whispers spread quickly about how we met. Lucas Hayes faced it all with quiet confidence. He never denied our relationship, but made sure everyone knew he had followed every rule. Once my care was officially transferred, the noise faded, but our bond deepened one night. Curled up on his couch, Lucas Hayes exhaled deeply. "I've never been happier," he said. It wasn't just about physical closeness anymore. It was about trust, vulnerability, and seeing each other fully. He spoke openly about the pressures of his work, the heartbreak of losing patients, the weight of responsibility, and his dream of opening a clinic for the LGBTQ community. In turn, I shared my own fears, the distance from my conservative family, the uncertainty of my career, and the dreams I still chased quietly. Then came the night that changed everything. Lucas Hayes looked at me with a seriousness I hadn't seen before. "Move in with me," said simply. The words caught me off guard, but they felt right. "I know it's fast," he added, "but I don't want to wake up without you. Are you sure?" I asked, my heart racing. He smiled. "My reputation comes from being a good doctor, but I'm also a man in love, and I'm not hiding that." That quiet confession shifted everything. Moving in together didn't feel like a leap. It felt like the natural next step. My minimalist furniture blended with his modern space. My sketches found a home beside his medical texts. We fell into a rhythm, coffee in the mornings, late-night conversations, the gentle comfort of simply being near each other. I loved watching him get ready for work, every movement precise and practiced. He loved catching me sketching late at night, always appearing with a fresh cup of coffee and a hand on my shoulder. Our connection deepened not through grand gestures, but through the quiet consistency of showing up. 5 months after moving in together, something shifted. Lucas Hayes grew distant. Private calls, missed dinners, vague explanations. I tried not to assume the worst, but worry crept in anyway. Then one evening, he asked me to meet him downtown. The address led to a newly renovated medical office, empty but full of potential. "What do you think?" he asked, eyes bright with nervous excitement. "It's perfect," I said honestly. "The light, the layout. It all feels alive, with possibility." He smiled, pulling a folder from his bag. "I've been working on this for months. Remember that dream I told you about? The LGBTQ plus clinic. I want to make it real." He paused, meeting my gaze. "And I was hoping you'd design the interiors." I stared at him, overcome not just by the opportunity, but by the trust it represented. It wasn't just about love anymore. It was about two people daring to build something bigger than themselves. "You want us to build this together?" I asked, hardly believing what I was hearing. "I want everything with you," Lucas Hayes said, his voice steady, warm, and full of life, love, and now work. "Your vision for space and healing fits perfectly with my vision for care. You make me better at this." That clinic became our shared dream over the following months. We poured ourselves into it. His focus on holistic, inclusive healthcare blended seamlessly with my passion for biophilic design, natural textures, soft lighting, open spaces, all carefully crafted to make people feel safe and welcome. But as we built the clinic, we were also building something else, a life together. What had begun as chance had grown into partnership, trust, and quiet devotion. Lucas Hayes' energy was contagious. He created wellness programs, organized support groups, and met with specialists, while I refined every design element down to the smallest plant and piece of art. Our nights were long, but filled with laughter, teamwork, and a sense of purpose that made every challenge worthwhile. The night before the grand opening, we stood in the finished space, arms wrapped around each other. The walls glowed in calming shades I had carefully chosen, accented by art from local LGBTQ creators. Each consultation room balanced comfort and professionalism. The waiting area felt more like a living room than a clinic. "It's perfect," Lucas Hayes whispered, pulling me closer. "Just like the day you tried to keep things professional," I teased. He laughed, then suddenly grew serious. Before I could speak, he dropped to one knee, a small box in his hand. "Ethan," he said, voice trembling with emotion, "this past year has been the most incredible of my life. You've helped me bring my dreams to life professionally and personally. You've changed everything. Will you marry me?" Inside the box was a sleek platinum ring, engraved with the words, "Love heals all." "Yes," I whispered, tears blurring my vision, pulling him into an embrace that said everything words couldn't. That night, as we celebrated quietly in the glow of the city lights, I reflected on how a single medical checkup had led to all of this. A shared purpose, a shared future, and a love that felt boundless. The next morning, as the clinic opened its doors for the first time, I stood back and watched Lucas Hayes greet the first patients. His warmth filled the space, turning the building into something far greater than walls and rooms. It became a sanctuary of belonging. When his eyes met mine across the room, there was no secrecy, no hesitation, no distance, only certainty, partnership, and love. Together, we had created not just a place of healing, but a life built on trust, compassion, and the kind of connection that makes both possible. The clinic hummed with life, the soft buzz of conversation, and the quiet rustle of pages filling the space. I watched Lucas Hayes move among the patients, warm, attentive, completely himself. Every smile, every gesture, radiated the care he had always promised to give. Our eyes met across the room. No words were needed. No secrecy. No hesitation. Only certainty, trust, and love. What began as a simple doctor's appointment had grown into so much more. A shared dream. A life built together, and a bond that neither time nor circumstance could break. In that moment, I understood that love doesn't always arrive in grand gestures or dramatic confessions. Sometimes it's quiet, patient, steady. It grows in the everyday, the laughter, shared work, the small acts of care, and before you know it, it becomes everything. We had built more than a clinic. We had built a life. And as the city outside continued its endless rhythm, we stood together, ready for whatever came next, knowing that, whatever it was, we would face it side by side.